Hello, I am Hernan Garcia with NOAA's National Environmental Satellite Data and Information Service, and I want to welcome you to the NOAA Environmental Leadership Seminar Series. The goal of these seminars is to showcase examples of the environmental leadership role that NOAA plays in our society by those who lead it and make it happen. I would like to take a moment for acknowledgements and seminar logistics. First, I would like to thank the NOAA Science Council for sponsoring these agency-wide seminars and the awesome NOAA team I work with in putting together these NOAA leadership seminars. Tracy Gill from the National Ocean Service, Sandra Clark, National Environmental Satellite Data Information Service, Katie Rowley, Oceanic and Atmospheric Research, Lindsay Kratz, National Marine Fisheries Service. We are also thankful to Mike Shelby, Robert Levy, and Fabio Boffa for their professional technical support. Second, I would like to share some seminar logistics. All online attendees are muted. Because of time limitations, there will be no questions taken from the audience. And we are recording this seminar for later viewing. Today's NOAA Leadership Seminar is NOAA Assistant Administrators Look at the Year Ahead 2022, first annual panel discussion. Our panel moderator is Ms. Louisa Koch, NOAA Director of Education, who has a distinguished career supporting NOAA's mission. Louisa, the mic is yours.
Well, thank you, Hernan. It's lovely to be going on this. And thanks to you and the leadership seminar team for all your good work in organizing this webinar. Welcome, everyone. Sorry we're a few minutes delayed, but we are now off and running. And today we're going to hear from NOAA's senior line office leadership. During this 90-minute panel, NOAA's 6 assistant administrators will share their programmatic priorities, talk about the importance of collaboration, and share future challenges, their thoughts on future challenges for NOAA. Our first speaker is Mr. Craig McLean. Craig is the acting NOAA Chief Scientist and Assistant Administrator for Oceanic and Atmospheric Research. Craig was the founding director of NOAA's Office of Ocean Exploration and Research and served as a member of the NOAA Corps for nearly 25 years. Craig, you have 5 minutes to provide a brief introduction to your line office and highlights for your work priorities in 2022. Hernan will signal you with a yellow card when you have 30 seconds remaining. Over to you.
Thank you, Louisa, Hernan, and the entire team. And those of you who know me, it's really hard for me to do anything in 5 minutes, never mind say hello to everyone. But let me first start with the origins of NOAA and the origins of OAR. For those of you who may or may not be familiar with this document, this is called the Stratton Commission Report, and it was a 1970 ocean policy document that set up the ambition for what NOAA should be. Included in there was the instruction to create an enterprise that studied the air and ocean interaction. We've been doing that for 50 years since NOAA was founded. And the answer to the question of what is the air and ocean interaction is what we know today as climate science. But it was established by creating a series of observation systems, measurement systems, that included a fleet of ships that were oceanographically deployed in addition to the other missions of NOAA, fisheries, and coast survey mapping the ocean, and also included atmospheric satellites, measurements from atmospheric greenhouse gas stations, all the things that NOAA built in order to define the ocean and the atmosphere. Fast forward today, we know that to be climate science, and NOAA has been an absolute foundational element in creating the understanding of climate in the nation and around the world. Our models are second to none, and the work that we do is the defining level of the state of climate. So where we are today finds us very much in the center of the climate discussion at the interagency level and at the international level, and also has us working rather rigorously in ocean, coastal, weather, and climate science. And we support the missions of each of the other line organizations, and I'm very proud to see how OAR has migrated towards this service through science orientation to make sure that we're supporting each of the other missions. While there, matters like the education program are principal to our success in helping us to recruit the next generation of scientists. Matters like the Sea Grant Marine Policy Fellowship, which serves all of NOAA and the executive and legislative branch both. That's headquartered inside of OAR. It's the resting place for something that serves all of NOAA, as is the Science Advisory Board Administration, the Cooperative Institute Enterprise, and the talented people that we have running those, working with each of the other line organizations. So from here, our priorities looking forward in the coming year, the President has told us we need to address the climate crisis. It's about time, and after 4 years of having that science basically budgetarily suppressed with a reduction of about 60% in the climate budget for the past 4 years proposed, very grateful can we stand and recognize that the Congress, regardless of party, has really voted to keep these budgets full and healthy. But we see now some enhancements to those budgets coming, and we're very grateful to be able to substantially improve and increase the Global Atmospheric Greenhouse Gas Observing Network, the Global Ocean Observing Network. Many people don't realize it, but better than 50% of the world's bill for in situ ocean observing is paid for through the NOAA budget, and largely through a budget line in our budget in the Global Ocean Monitoring and Observing Program. So we have a lot to do, and we're looking forward to doing that, but not to be making these observations, science, and models for the sake of doing good science. It's for the mission. And with that, I have to commend each of my colleagues here on this AA panel.
Thank you, Craig, and thank you for all the work that OAR does to advance NOAA's mission across the line offices.
All working for the same
Our next speaker is Ms. Nicole LeBoeuf, the Director of the National Ocean Service and Assistant Administrator for Ocean Services and Coastal Zone Management. Nicole grew up in the Gulf, on the Gulf Texas coast, and worked in the National Marine Fisheries Service before joining the National Ocean Service. Nicole, please provide us a brief introduction to your line office and highlights for your work priorities in 2022.
Thanks, Louisa. Good afternoon. I'm honored to be with you today on behalf of NOS, although I hope my video isn't too choppy. I'm calling from the Middle Peninsula of Virginia, where I can see with my own eyes that high tides are reclaiming lands upon which there are still homes, still lived-in homes, built in the 1700s and the 1800s. It's quite the reality check as I speak with you here today about the diversity of NOS's mission and our priorities in climate prediction and adaptation. NOS's programs include the National Marine Sanctuaries, measuring and predicting sea level rise, tracking and issuing warnings about harmful algal blooms, and responding to oil spills. We also conduct surveys for nautical charts and measure the Earth's lumpy shape as we detect locations with such precision that our data form the basis of our GIS and GPS applications. With such a diverse mission, the National Ocean Service is sometimes called NOAA's Swiss Army knife. If you need a tool to solve a problem along the coast, NOS probably has it. Perhaps that's true, but the Swiss Army knife analogy doesn't convey where I believe NOS's future lies. In a necessity to collaborate across NOS and with many others to solve problems along our coast that are more complex than ever, and to unlock opportunities to secure our nation's stability and prosperity in the years ahead. In addition to our tool-by-tool problem-solving work, NOS will continue to undertake collaborative efforts to prepare our nation for climate change, and this year that will be done via two complementary efforts. NOS will seek to create conditions for climate adaptation and prosperity in the face of some of the most pressing challenges in our country via coastal resilience and the new blue economy. Those who work in the field of coastal resilience know that it's not one thing, one activity, or one program name with these two words in it. Coastal resilience is a desired state of being requiring many inputs and contributions over time and suited to the needs of what you're trying to make resilient, tailored to the conditions to which you're trying to make that thing resilient. There is no one-size-fits-all. Contributing to coastal resilience requires a lot of listening, trusted relationships, and working in close partnership with others. Taking a collaborative approach, NOS is focused on both the data and science that supports coastal resilience via our climate predictive capabilities as well as service delivery and adaptation. As two examples, NOS recently released our 2021 State of the High Tide Flooding Annual Outlook and a new operational forecast system along the West Coast, which predicts water levels, currents, temperature, and salinity throughout Washington, Oregon, and California's coastal waters. Our ability to understand and predict what's happening on the coast and in the ocean is central to the next line of NOS work, the new blue economy. NOAA Administrator Dr. Rick Spinrad defines the new blue economy as a knowledge-based economy looking to the sea, not for extraction of material goods, but for data and information to address societal challenges and to inspire their solutions. You see, in order to grow the new blue economy, we must extract information, the ultimate renewable resource, and use it for societal good. The way I see it is that with a robust observing and computational infrastructure, data from the ocean and ocean life can be harvested over and over again to promote innovative ocean conservation, equitable solutions, resilient planning, and spawn diverse new solutions we haven't even dreamed of yet. That's because the geographies in which the new blue economy will occur are shifting rapidly with profoundly debilitating events like hurricanes and sea level rise. These changes, however, will open up opportunities for those who are able to predict and offer more stable conditions for financial investment and climate resilient infrastructure critical to our way of life. The ability to advance these two priority areas is certainly not unique to NOS. However, NOS does have decades of experience and uniquely held capabilities and authorities to be leveraged for the benefit of other federal agencies, states, and the private industry to ensure that inputs and contributions required to achieve success in both areas are readily available. In 2022, the NOS leadership team and I will be reaching out to trusted partners like the Integrated Ocean Observing System Regional Associations and the Coastal States Organization, along with the shipping, mapping, finance, and insurance industries, and the offshore wind development companies, and others, because we are all in this together. As NOAA's lead for coastal resilience, NOS welcomes other parts of NOAA to bring their expertise to bear and to develop new cross-line office capabilities more impactful than any one line office could deliver alone. And we are serving in multiple key working groups to clarify and solidify not just NOS, but NOAA's role as authoritative provider of information and services relative to coastal resilience and the new blue economy. If you've already realized that progress on each of these fronts is required to enable the other, then perhaps you too have something to contribute to this important work. With that, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thanks very much, Nicole, and for all you and your line office do to support the ocean and coastal economy. It's now my pleasure to introduce Louis Uchillini. Dr. Uchillini is NOAA's Assistant Administrator for Weather Services and Director of the National Weather Service. Louis has worked for 43 years in public service as a research scientist, day-to-day operational leader, and senior executive. Louis, please provide a brief introduction to your line office and highlights for your work priorities in 2022.
Thank you, Louisa, and thank all the folks that are on this webinar. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak about the Weather Service. Celebrating 151st year, has a glorious history of developing a forecast capability, and I'm over that period of time, which has really become meaningful, I would say, in the last 40 or 50 years, where decision makers have to now account for what we're providing to prepare communities for oncoming extreme events. The mission statement itself provide weather, water, climate data for the protection of life and property, and this is data that involves the weather, water, and climate communities. So this is, has a cross NOAA aspect right from the get-go. The thing I'd like to emphasize there, though, is forecast. The Weather Service was the first agency to have either forecast or prediction in its mission statement, and now NOAA does. And that also shows, I think, the expanding role of prediction in providing services throughout NOAA. And you have the fisheries services on the line with us. We have ocean services. This is a big deal because as a federal agency, we're the only one that actually has prediction in our mission statement. And it's also a reflection of how other science really stayed away from the forecasting world for a long, long time, and only more recently have been getting involved. So that also points to our association with other disciplines that are involved in things like the water quality aspects, the critters, as Margaret Davidson used to call them, that live in the water, and the health factors, and we're seeing increased activity in that as well. The vision of the Weather Service is to build a weather-ready nation, so that every community is ready for and responds to oncoming extreme events. And this has been particularly up to this point in the weather and water, freshwater arena, to protect folks, for example, in terms of severe weather outbreaks, oncoming hurricanes, the extreme fires, extreme heat, extreme cold. The idea is to work very closely with the emergency management community and other components of public safety throughout government, at the federal, state, and especially the local levels, where most of the decisions in this country are made in terms of public safety. So we're right smack in the middle of the intergovernmental aspect of decision making, right down to the point where we're interacting with the people who order the evacuations, whether it's in the face of an oncoming hurricane or now the fires in the western part of the country, which is a relatively new posture for decision makers to take to evacuate communities days in advance of a projected fire. With respect to addressing the priorities for fiscal year 22, we're really following along the administration priorities in the climate and the social equity areas. Climate, because an interesting thing happened with the IPCC. This year, the IPCC basically took the gloves off with respect to the linkage of climate change, global warming, to extreme weather and water events. So we're right in the middle of that equation. And and the administration has a particular focus, and that is with respect to the fires and extreme heat, which of course we predict fire weather conditions and extreme conditions, whether it's heat or cold. And you might want to add to that with respect to extreme rainfalls that we've seen, the historic rainfalls in extratropical regimes, like we saw in New York City with 3.1 inches of rain falling in 1 hour, flooding subways. And as far as I can tell, this is the first time the subways in New York City have been flooded from water that fell from the sky, not from the water that came from the sea. Although I'm not discounting the importance of the latter, it really does offer a new dimension. And the last point I'll make here, you see this tremendous expanse. The social equity comes in terms of the communities we serve. We do provide services to tribal nations, and the Weather Ready Nation involves them. The indigenous Alaskan communities, Southwest Pacific Island states, islands out in the Caribbean. The fact is we still have work to do in that regard in the social equity, especially as we see the latest data coming in on the urban environments, the poor rural areas, how they are more vulnerable to these types of events, and we need to step up our game to address that. So we're all in on that. We're getting the support from the Hill to move forward in 22, and I have to tell you that in discussing these with the Hill, it's an all NOAA discussion. We go down in teams with the AAs from various line offices working these issues, and that's been one of the reasons I believe we've gained the support in our 22 budget to address these kinds of issues. And the last point I'll make from a Weather Service perspective is that it's in building the Weather Ready Nation to address the mission statement, which now includes impact-based decision support services. That is taking us from the physical sciences as a basis we are very comfortable working with into the social sciences, and how to message that, how to link it to key decision points to get the responses that we need to protect the life and property. That's the second part of our mission statement. So this is a really important transformation for the Weather Service, and the lesson learned here is you got to work collaboratively within NOAA and also with the larger research community as we try to advance. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. And unfortunately, in the days ahead, I think the important services of the National Weather Service are going to be even more important to protect lives and property. Our next speaker is Rear Admiral Nancy Hann, the Deputy Director for Operations of the NOAA Office of Marine and Aviation Operations and Deputy Director of the NOAA Commissioned Officer Corps. Nancy started her career with NOAA as a fisheries observer and has served as a NOAA Corps officer for over 20 years in operational and management assignments throughout NOAA. Rear Admiral Hann, please provide a brief introduction to your line office and highlights for your work priorities in 2022.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay, Louisa?
Yep.
Okay, good. Good afternoon,
Speak up.
everyone.
Speak up.
Okay, I'll put this up here. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this. I'll make some quick remarks about the Office of Marine and Aviation Operations. So many of the initiatives that have been talked about to this point are enabled by the at-sea data collection, the airborne data collection of NOAA ships and aircraft and uncrewed systems, supported by our personnel, and that is our responsibility to operate those platforms. Our mission statement is to optimize NOAA's observational platforms and unique workforce capabilities to meet NOAA's science, service, and stewardship missions. And as I said, we do that with the workforce, NOAA ships, aircraft, and uncrewed systems, in addition support through NOAA diving and small boat programs. Our priorities in fiscal year 22 and beyond are clearly stated in our OMAO strategic plan, and it's built on 3 pillars, built on people, platforms, and culture. And this really informs everything that we do in providing that service across NOAA more broadly to the nation. It all starts with people, so there's very focused metrics by year that talk about the workforce, the diversity of the workforce, the training of the workforce. We have 5 personnel systems, 5 bargaining unit agreements. It's a very diverse workforce, which is the strength of our organization. It talks about the platform. So recapitalization of NOAA ships and aircraft are underway. NOAA delivered its first new aircraft in over 10 years in the past few months. There's another aircraft, a high-altitude jet, which will be the most capable climate aircraft in the world, set for delivery and missions by hurricane season of 2024. And 2 new NOAA ships are on contract and being built in Louisiana. There's a series of ships and aircraft to be recapitalized behind those, so it's a very exciting time. And then culture. None of this matters if we don't have the right culture, and that has been a priority of the organization. It is our expectation that every employee and everybody that sails and flies and operates with us will have a workforce that is safe mentally, physically, and emotionally, and they will be empowered to be their best possible employee and accelerate if they're willing to put in the hard work. So these are the 3 tenets of our organization that will inform our initiatives in FY22 and beyond. And I look forward to commenting further on the other questions. Back to you, Louisa.
Our next speaker is Dr. Steve Volz, the Acting Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Environmental Observation and Prediction and Assistant Administrator for the National Environmental Satellite Data and Information Service. Prior to joining NOAA, Steve worked as a top program manager at NASA for many years. He has 35 years of professional experience in aerospace. Steve, please provide us a brief introduction to your line office and highlights for your work priorities in 2022.
Sure. Thank you, Louisa, and thanks everybody for taking the time today to be with us. So when most people first hear about NESDIS, their first thought is about satellites. Well, actually, the first thought is, what's NESDIS? I've never heard of them before. So who are they and why are they here? And I think it's really a hallmark of our performance, of our organization, that you know us not because of our name, but by the work that we do by enabling others to be successful. I really feel that NESDIS, yes, we are the satellite, we're the Environmental Satellite Data and Information Service. So we are the organization within NOAA that provides the satellite observations that are a key piece of all of those, many of those services you heard the other AAs talking about over the last few minutes. But we're also the information service. This is really where the value of what we do as a community, not just NESDIS, but NOAA, is really found. It's in the information that we provide, the knowledge that comes from it. And within NESDIS, we have the National Centers for Environmental Information, which is the world's largest archives of environmental data. Not just satellite data, but also ships and airplanes and sonars and radars and other data, and paleographic data going back thousands of years, paleoclimate data taken in various different ways. So we are really, from observations to data and archiving, we are cradle to grave, where we provide that background information. But we really are not the front door, the front page of most of the publications and most of the outreach that NOAA is noted for, because we really are, we see ourselves as sort of the fuel in the engine by which NOAA is successful. By the fuel, I mean we're the observations. We provide the observations that make the information dissemination possible. And by the engine, it's that assimilation, the information, the integration, and the knowledge gained from that observation, from our archives and the like, and working with all the subject matter expertise and all the experts in the different line offices. That is the power of creativity that NOAA brings to the environmental challenges that we all face. We in NESDIS succeed by helping other line offices to succeed and celebrating the success of the forecasts and the services and the other provisions that are provided. But we're also a satellite agency, and looking to FY22 in what we bring forward. This will be a big year for us, NOAA, and for NESDIS. We're launching 2 of our largest satellites. The GOES-T, the Geostationary Observation Satellite, will be launching in February of 2022. It'll be the 3rd of that series. And also JPSS, our Joint Polar Satellite Series, our 2nd satellite in that series, will be launching next September, October timeframe. So it's a very busy year in 22. These 2 satellites going back are sort of the existing demonstrations of a legacy going back 50 years in terms of satellite development and observations. Also this year we're launching a new program, the Next Generation Geostationary, GeoXO. And this is really the first all NOAA geo satellite that we have flown. It will be providing not just atmospheric dynamics and weather information for the Weather Service, ocean color information for the Ocean Service and for Fisheries Service, atmospheric composition for air quality and for air chemistry for the Ocean Atmospheric Research Organization. Basically, all of the branches of NOAA are going to be supported by our Next Generation Geostationary. And to give you an idea of the time scale, this satellite will be operating from the 2030 to 2050 timeframe. So we really are thinking long term. It is the hallmark of what NOAA does, as Louis Uchillini mentioned, going back hundreds of years, not quite, but over 100 years for the Weather Service. We're in it for the long haul, and we provide information that goes back thousands of years and services that go forward for just as many, for not thousands, but go forward many years into the future. The other piece of the significant energy where we spent over the last few years is in innovation in information technology and information service delivery. Through our cloud enterprises that are happening within NESDIS and across NOAA, we're looking for and enhancing the internal and external use of our data so we can all inside NOAA use it better, but also make the data more accessible to the world, because we really are, we need the best information to make the best choices. And that dissemination and the utilization of that data by the world is really how we value, how we quantify our success and our progress, is by making sure the data are used. Unused data is useless data as far as I'm concerned. So we have to make sure that it's made available in a way that can be used by others, and that's really the key part of our environmental intelligence or information systems. So I'm really happy to be an enabler of what NOAA does, and for our organization and our community to be a part of this enterprise. And I'm looking forward to the further conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve, for all the important information that NESDIS collects and curates for NOAA and the nation. Next we have Ms. Janet Coit, last but not least. Janet is the Acting Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere and NOAA Deputy Administrator, as well as the Assistant Administrator for the National Marine Fisheries Service. Janet joined NOAA this past summer, so she is the new kid on the block. Prior to joining NOAA, Janet served as Rhode Island's top environmental official for more than a decade. She has more than 30 years of experience on environmental issues, natural resource management, and stewardship. Janet, please provide a brief introduction to your line office and highlights for your work priorities in 2022.
Thank you, Louisa. First, as the new kid on the block, I would like to say thank you to everyone, my line office compatriots who spoke before me, and all the people at the National Marine Fisheries Service, and really everyone I've met at NOAA. I've been here less than 4 months, and I can't say enough about how welcoming and impressive and exciting the people I've met are. So I want to thank everybody. Secondly, I'd like to spend a few minutes on my background before I jump into the incredible mission of NOAA and the National Marine Fisheries Service. I come to this position after 10 years of running a state program, so I'm acutely aware of the expertise and importance of our state partners. The 10 years that I spent at the Nature Conservancy made me appreciate how opportunistic and nimble, as compared to government, the NGOs can be. And then I spent almost 8 years working for the US Senate, starting out working for a real hero and mentor of mine, John Chafee, who was the governor before that, but he ended up as the chair of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. And worked with him on fisheries issue early in my career. And so it gives me, coming into this job with all you world-class scientists on the panel, and truly everyone up and down on NOAA is supporting its mission. I appreciate the opportunity to take our partnerships with states and NGOs, our relationships with Capitol Hill, the science that drives our work, and put it to use supporting our mission. So the National Marine Fisheries Service is an incredible resource that supports the economy, it supports our food ecosystem, and our mission is nothing short of stewardship of our living marine resources. So foremost amongst our priorities, always thinking about sustainable fisheries, protecting and recovering threatened and endangered species and marine mammals, restoring habitat, promoting resilience. But as I look to FY22, many of the subjects that have been covered are foremost on our minds, and indeed we're working across line offices on them. So first and foremost, and really as a frame for everything, is climate change. We can see in the marine environment affecting our fisheries, affecting our social communities, and sustenance fishing, dramatic changes. Our chief scientists like to say it's a whole different ocean than what he studied when he got his PhD. So the work that we're doing both to promote resilience that Nicole LeBoeuf talked a lot about, the work that we're doing to be predictive so that a business that is investing in a new processing facility or a new boat or a community that's counting on landing certain species knows what's going to happen and can make decisions based on that. And then really our role in combating climate change. One of the things that we are focusing on necessarily is the siting of offshore wind. That is central to this administration's strategy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It's within our marine environment, and trying to identify and minimize conflicts and ensure that we have responsible siting and construction of offshore wind so that it's sustainable in the long run and it achieves mutual goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and conserving our marine resources and supporting fisheries. That is a primary focus of National Marine Fisheries Service, and indeed represented in the increase in the budget. Other areas include the incredible work we're doing with the Ocean Service and OAR on the Climate and Fisheries Initiative. As Louis said, he's got prediction in his mission, but really in order to make sound decisions and support the millions of jobs and the billions of dollars that come into this economy through fisheries, we need to understand better. We need to invest more in science and understand and predict what is happening in our marine environment. Several people have mentioned both improving the diversity of our workforce and also our environmental justice and equity work. Again, that is cross-cutting, but I think with fisheries, we can see very tangibly and directly how that impacts communities, whether they're the folks making nets or selling ice, going out on the ocean, or whether people are fishing for sustenance, which is in many areas of the country what we experience. So very excited from Secretary Raimondo on down to promoting U.S. seafood, which is safe and sustainable, combating illegal fishing, and looking at how we might promote aquaculture for food and resilience. There's too many exciting things ahead. Those are some areas of focus. And again, it's just been a privilege to work with this group and all the folks I've met here at NOAA.
Thank you very much, Janet, for all you're doing to promote sustainable fisheries and protect species. We are delighted to have you in the NOAA leadership team. It is now time to move to our second question. The second question is, how is cross-line office collaboration relevant to NOAA staff across the nation and to the American people? Each panelist will have just 1 minute to respond. Hernan will signal with a yellow card when there's 10 seconds remaining. After each panelist shares their thoughts, we will have some time for discussion. So please listen carefully to your colleagues and help us find commonalities and differences across the panel. Our first speaker is Nicole LeBoeuf. Nicole.
All right, I think I'm unmuted. I alluded to this in my remarks a little bit. I really believe at my core that we can develop collaborations across NOAA that provide more value and that are more innovative and more useful for problem solving, particularly when it comes to climate, than any of us can do by ourselves. I think it's interesting that within NOAA, we see the individual line offices and staff offices, the programs, down to the teams that are formed under the councils and the board structure. We know all of that granularity and where the expertise lies, and that's important. We're proud of our achievement. We're proud of our individual identities. In fact, you know, precursor to the Office of Coast Survey in the National Ocean Service goes back 214 years. I love that we're proud about these things. I love that we're proud of ourselves and our accomplishments. But, and even some of our expert user groups, they know which tailored product to use and when to use another one. But most of the public, most of those that we need to sit up and listen and use our products maybe for the first time, they only see NOAA, even if they know that NOAA exists. So when we talk about our individual programs too much, particularly with the general public, I think we're talking at a level of granularity that's just not useful for them like it is for us inside NOAA. So I would say across all of our workforce, no matter where you are in the country, we should work more to speak with one voice, give attribution to one another, tweet out one another's accomplishments, for example, and use that fantastic NOAA logo wherever we can. Because if we do this even more thoughtfully and more assertively, no matter where we are and what we do, we'll be able to represent all of ourselves that much better. So that's what I would say. That's sort of at a high level, but of course, there's so many collaboration opportunities across NOAA.
Thanks very much, Nicole. Louis, you're up next.
This is as a matter of urgent need, actually. I would say over the last 10 years, it's been a discovery process for many of us, maybe 10 to 20 years, in terms of what each line office can bring to work that we need to do. So let me give you some examples. I'll take the NOS example of producing harmful algae bloom forecast. When they were doing it, starting it, working with GLERL on different science aspects of freshwater harmful algae bloom, they came upon a forecasting process that now modeling components of it now reside on what was considered the weather computer, okay, because it needs our type of information. The point is, when they had a forecast, how is it best distributed? Well, they found out, and this is Rick Spinrad tells this story, that going to a weather service office, a local office that has already have connectivity with decision makers, is not the only way, but it is a way to reach more people and more of the decision makers. And we've made that work along the Gulf Coast and for Lake Erie. There are now official products and services. In improving our models, we have to rely on, to a large extent, on OAR, even as we work with the larger research aspects, research community across the nation. Observations that feed the computers, the Joint Center for Satellite Data Assimilation, which involves OAR, yes, but a tremendous partnership with NESDIS to tap into their into the satellite data they provide much more rapidly, accelerate that transition into operations so the American people realize the value of the investments they're making in the satellites. We used to take 2-3 years to really figure out how to use the data. Well, that was like 40 to 60% of the life cycle of that satellite. Those are hundreds of millions of dollars and now billions of dollars, right? So the point is we have to work across the lines to advance the missions of our individual line organizations, but also the overall mission of NOAA to the public. And it's going to be even more important. I've mentioned the climate, weather, water linkage in terms of the climate change and the extreme events. Those services are wanted now. Okay, now. We have to build off of the partnerships we've made within NOAA and the trusted relationships to move this forward to serve America's needs in the face of these extreme events. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Next up, Hann.
Hello again. So I think to the points my colleagues have made, and I would build on it, just say it's not just the importance of working across the NOAA line office and staff office, but the connections that brings through partnerships with academia, industry, and our other federal partners. It is absolutely critical to the most efficient and effective utilization of NOAA's ships and aircraft, uncrewed systems, and the NOAA Corps. We rely on that, whether it's a team of scientists that come aboard a NOAA ship from multiple institutions and line offices, to working with federal and international partners to design and deliver the most capable aircraft in the world. Partnerships are absolutely essential to everything we do if we want to maximize the resources we have. And that's the service that we owe to the nation. We owe them that service. So I think it's absolutely critical to the mission for every aspect of NOAA.
Thank you very much, Hann. Up next, Dr. Volz.
The answer here is that we're addressing systems challenges, Earth system challenges. So the time when we would deal with small area foci and specific answers is not going to address the bigger challenge. We speak a lot about about providing useful data, but I think gone are the days when just providing a data stream and more data is the answer. I think right now we only provide the data that is based on feedback. We need to know how the data are being used and how the data are being useful. So that really requires partnership. It requires listening to the users and the communities that are trying to benefit from what we have. And that could be internal, it could be external, to my other colleagues' presentations about not just NOAA, but others as well. So I've told my team within NESDIS that any innovation proposal that comes forward must have users as sponsors, not as recipients of the information we provide. Not just as recipients, but as sponsors. And it's only through that sponsorship and co-development that they're going to be successful. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Okay, Janet, you're up.
Offices to the American people. And a couple thoughts come immediately to mind. One is, the ships and the planes that Admiral Hann is responsible for and her NOAA Corps are critical to the science and the surveys that we do that supports the world's most sustainable fisheries and among the largest. And that translates into, what one fisherman in Rhode Island calls our strategic protein reserve, but to food, to jobs, to the culture and identity of many people in America. Similarly, I think the work that we're doing across line offices to understand sea level rise and ocean acidification and stock shifts are part of promoting the resilience of our marine ecosystems, yes, but also our coastal communities and the people that depend upon our blue economy. And again, I think that everyone across NOAA is invested in that work, but it touches down all across America in really tangible ways. So as Nicole said, maybe not everyone knows NESDIS from the Ocean Service, but I think that we can better talk about how tangible and direct the work we do is when it comes to supporting the sustainability of our coastal economies and people across America.
Thanks, Janet. Greg, you're up next.
Improve the quality of the weather forecast for the American citizens and for coastal resilience and inland resilience, working climate issues all across the country. So we're not just about any one thing. We serve all the mission lines, and we do so with the collegial nature of approach of each of the other line organizations. I'll stop there, Louisa. Thank you very much. Thanks, Louisa, and thanks to my colleagues for your answers thus far. I think it's pretty plain to say there's not a single mission in NOAA that any one line organization does alone. So that right away is our indicator where collaboration is necessary, not just relevant. If we look at the initiative or the influence behind our working together, when we're rich, and we know that NOAA isn't, rich in budget, you work in isolation. And when you're poor, you don't have enough money to really put much together. But when you're in that hungry spot, and I think that's where NOAA is in our budget enterprise, you work collaboratively because that's survival skill. Look at our good friends up in Alaska, all of our NOAA colleagues and extended community representatives there from the state.
Okay, we've heard from each of you briefly, and it's now time for a little bit of discussion. Does anybody have an idea that they want to weigh in on across the group?
Also work.
Particular era that we are addressing the climate change issue, the administration's made it clear it's an all-of-government solution problem to be addressed. It's actually all of humanity in effect.
Out of it.
When we go out into the public,
I think,
and
that
if we're not
very
working
much shared with our
carefully
leadership,
interagency partners,
there's no finer leader that we've
clear
got
on
who's
what our role is
experienced
and how we're working
across
together
two
in
line
complementary
organizations
and
and as
complementary
chief
fashion,
scientist
then
in Rich Finrad.
it just breaks down
Collaboration
that,
is the
that
key to
collaborative
NOAA's
benefit,
success. We see it
collaborative
at the
nature
regional
we have.
level,
I think it's
we see it at the
what has
working
been made
level,
clear
and we need
in
to
this
make sure
community
that we
of
do it at the
leadership we have here
programmatic
and
level.
working
We're
with the
budget
administration is
oriented in our
really
line
strong
organization
intent to
description
have
and also through our
collaborative
history.
agency
But that's not how we
response
do our
to
business.
the climate
We have to be
action,
doing
which
it
is
all
different, I will
across
say, from my
all
years
of
in the
NOAA
government,
in order
where
to be fully
it
successful.
has historically been,
Thank you
how do I
very
get
much.
my agency's budget increased? How do I advance my position? So I really think that's changed at the top, but I think it helps for all of us to model that, even in the face of residual, me first approaches that you may hear in your encounters with partners, to recognize that we really have to model and demonstrate the behavior we want others to demonstrate as well. So it really is not just NOAA, but it is coming together as one NOAA in the outside world and really trying to bring the rest of our agencies along in the same manner. Thanks.
Anyone else want to weigh in on this? Nope, all yours.
Even to elaborate on one of Nicole's earlier point, to a lot of people, they don't differentiate the federal government, one agency to the next. But I was going to throw a question to this group because I think the Dr. Spinrad often talks about what he calls R to X, and how our scientific innovation can drive new businesses and new economic ventures. So I wondered for this group what you think are some of the most exciting areas of innovation when we look at the next year or two when it comes to data collection and sort of leapfrogging ahead in our scientific ventures.
Well, okay. Now, I was just going to say, there's an incredible number of areas that I think we could point to in terms of working with each other in the technology arena, the science arena, and the service arena. The one thing I'll note that I've been around here now a pretty long time trying to work R2O work and to make it work and to convince the Hill that these types of teams and approaches actually will advance us faster. I'll just reflect that when I was co-director of the U.S. Weather Research Program, we couldn't get cross-agency presence on the Hill even. Over the last several years, the Team NOAA approach has involved hearings, visits, discussions with the Hill, the appropriation staff, to the point now where they expect it. and they're asking us, what do we need? I don't think this is an accident, all right, because what they're seeing is an incredible resource being brought to bear that cuts across lines. I'll point to the fire program. I think Steve, Craig, and I made 3 appearances on the Hill. And you look in the continuing resolution, and what do you see? You know, you see you're seeing money being put to the fire weather program, okay, and the same thing with the hurricane program. And I see what's going on between fisheries and the modeling, the rest of the modeling folks here in NOAA to try to study the fish migration as a relationship to the warming waters. I think that's remarkable, because I can tell you 15, 20 years ago, you couldn't get us in the same room. So I think this is not just something that we're talking about to try to get the next generation all excited about working in NOAA or looking forward to this fiscal year. It's been happening the last couple of years. It's paying rewards now to NOAA, and we're going to have to deliver on that, which I would be really looking forward to if I wasn't retiring. But I think it's a great day for NOAA and what they'll be doing over the next many years with this Team NOAA approach. Thank you.
Nicole.
And Louis, we are going to be such a mess without you, I just have to say. Every time you mention your retirement, I feel like I'm going to crawl in a corner and ask myself where I'm going to get all your stories from. But anyway, what I will say is, and I alluded to this earlier, I believe that prediction is everything going forward. And I have actually been on the Hill and been asked, does NOAA have a crystal ball? And I said, no, we have something better than that. We have time series of data and modelers and incoming real-time data. And we're not making it up. We are predicting what we believe will be happening in the future, because increasingly the world we've lived in will not be the world that we will live in. And I believe that our ability to model and predict and digest huge amounts of data will be areas of great opportunity, great challenge, but where so much of our work is going to move towards.
Well said. So let's go ahead and move to our next question. Each panelist will have 1 minute to answer the question. Hernan will signal with a yellow card when you have 10 seconds left. After you get a chance to share your thoughts, we'll have some more time for discussion. This time we're going to start with Dr. Volz. So Steve, what are the most impactful future mission challenges best served by cross-NOAA line collaboration?
System impactful mission challenge will be our ability to look at the Earth as a system and understand it as a system, and that's bringing together. I was going to say the innovation is in data management and data analytics, bringing together observations of the physical, biological, chemical, and social interactions that are and processes that are affecting our climate, our environment, and our lives. And I think that's going to be our ability to do that, to bring those data together, those observations together in a smart way, not just throwing all the data into this great big vat and expecting something to pop out, but putting it together carefully so that we have data-driven science and we have serendipity showing up and allowing us to understand connections and phenomena in a way that we haven't in the past. And I think that's going to be, we're at the threshold of that, the cusp of that great awakening, I will say, with the availability of information and the systems to allow us to bring it together. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge, is how to exploit that as it becomes available. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Rob Rohan.
Louisa, I think you called on me. My phone's cutting in and out.
Yes, I did.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
You, Nancy.
So I think the biggest challenge that we're going to face that is going to require cross-line office and staff office collaboration speaks to many of the topics that have been brought up. So whether it's fire weather, changes in abundance and distribution of fisheries, coastal resilience, we're seeing a demand for NOAA products and services It's exponential to anything I really ever expected to see. I think hurricane flights are a good example. The P3 hurricane flights have increased 100% in 5 years. I mean, if you just think about that for a minute, 100% flight hour increase in 5 years. That's not an isolated example. From our portfolio, we see it whether it's, snow survey and studying, collecting the data for the spring flood melts. We've mentioned fire weather. We've mentioned the changes in distribution, abundance of fisheries. The list goes on, and it stretches across every single line office. The only way that we are going to meet the needs of the nation and deliver the products and services that Americans rely on every single day to live their recreational life, live their, have economic stability, have national security, are to work across lines together to maximize the resources and the expertise and the data that we have. It is the only way we will come close to meeting those demands, which are so critical. There's really no leeway not to meet those demands. So I think the biggest challenge is going to be meeting the demands of the nation, which are critical, and meeting it in the time that the demands are coming, which we can all see how quickly and in how many areas they're coming.
Well said. Louis.
We talk about entering the Earth system science arena, where we're dealing with the atmosphere, oceans, land, cryosphere, and biology and chemistry now is fully coupled. Actually now building that system and executing it reliably every day, providing the useful information on time, every time, has its challenges in and of itself, both from a science and engineering perspective. But in feeding the data into that model, and I was just thinking of Admiral Hann's comments with respect to the hurricane hunters, they're being used more because the data they provide in real time actually influences the track forecast. When these storms are just developing out over the water, so do the satellite data, so do the in situ gliders that are being provided. So, we've always found that the observations feeding these models, there are no silver bullets. Every observing system has its strength. They all have their weaknesses. And data assimilation and executing the models in real time are a real challenge. And it's going to become even more so in the Earth system framework because we got the ocean data, we got the ice, the cryospheric data, we got the land data, we got it all. We got to bring this together to provide the services that America needs. So I think that's going to be an amazingly exciting challenge, but a challenge nonetheless for the entire value chain from observations to the services provided.
Will make us stronger and is a critical effort that we need to do across line offices together with Dr. Spinrad and do things differently than we've done them in the past and work together. I think it's a huge challenge for NOAA, and I think it's something that we're focused on and that is really important to mission success going forward.
Multiple NOAA programs. The mapping and characterization and exploration of the EEZ that we're doing with NOS and other agencies in the federal sector, we just saw an autonomous uncrewed system generate the same kind of or better data than a fully staffed oceanographic research vessel can do. So I think the dam has broken open and the proliferation of uncrewed systems is now upon us, and we're proving those in the research and applications area that they're ready for operational use. That's going to really open up the doors, lower the cost per unit data acquired. Over.
Thank you, Craig. Nicole.
Thanks, Louisa, and thanks to my colleagues. I agree with everything mentioned so far, and let me kick it up to just a slightly higher level. I think NOAA's
provided
biggest
a compelling
impact
answer that I would say right on to
as a trusted source for
some of the most important specific lines of work that we're involved in at NOS, like improving hurricane intensification modeling, assessing and protecting our own buildings and workforce and partners from threats along the coast. I think NOAA's biggest challenge will be the prediction and communication of risk for decision-making broadly and specifically, as Steve said, putting it together carefully and perhaps even kickstarting a great awakening. I believe the development of rational decision support in an area where rational thought is going to be less and less available to people is going to be our biggest challenge. We know that climate change is happening now. It's daunting. We know that the rate of change is accelerating, but we will be front and center at not only meeting information demands, but in creating the kinds of services that get through to people, not just because they believe it, but because they can, so that they can make changes in their daily life. We're pretty good at convincing people to take an umbrella with them each day, but asking people to look sea level rise in the face is altogether different. I believe it's about finding the right observations, the right calculations, the right words, the right fora, and the right words to really convince folks that we're not just authoritative, but we have skin in the game because we live in these places as well. It's going to be one of our greatest challenges. And I know we're up to it, but I think it's going to take us all working together in our complementary ways, as you've seen just here today.
So there's clearly a lot of very challenging times ahead of us. We're making progress on delivering better services, but having the people that need to hear those services listen to us, having them understand what we're telling them, having them trust us as a source of information that they can rely on, is going to require a lot of work. What do we need to do to move in that direction faster and farther?
Behave is the wrong term, to act on the information in a way that is, traceable. I mean, they will still act on their own best interest, but at least that we ensure the information is crossed is really it's a scaling problem that we have, and there are a million different communications that have to take place, and what our challenge is going to be is sort of scaling the answers to at the right level. And I know NOAA is uniquely suited to do that amongst many federal agencies, in that we do have a footprint that's across the country. But we're going to really test the limits of our ability to do that, because the demand for the different kinds of information in the different environments, sea level rise means something different in Maine than it does in New Orleans, and than it does in the Pacific Northwest. And our ability to talk to each of those different communities on the same topic is really going to challenge our consistency and diversity at the same time. And I think that's going to be really what we need the whole community to be thinking about, is not just how to speak as one NOAA, but to speak as one NOAA with many different voices, listening to the communities that we're trying to help and help inform at the same time. And we're working with that at the executive level, trying to understand how to use the RESAs and the regional climate service centers and the regionalization that we have already. But that's going to be something that's going to really need the help of the whole community to give feedback on what's working and what isn't in the different regions, and to share those best practices across the agency.
To talk to somebody whose ancestors have been here 100 years. If you want to design a new program that has a better impact on the ground, talk to us about how to scope that program in our community. So I think adding on to what Nicole and Steve said, is thinking about things differently, and then listening to communities about what they need. And it's not just the science, it's the tools and the touchdown. And that is, I guess I'm just echoing it. I think that's different in different regions, and the way we develop effective communications, involves the partnering, the listening, and the collaboration at the community level, which can be hard for a big federal agency.
Are there things that we think that that some of the NOAA employees that are listening here today should do differently? How are we expecting the NOAA workforce to help carry through this initiative?
Federal agencies who work
Right.
in our space, and we need them, and they are
Craig,
good partners.
okay.
But at times, the press machine is bigger and louder than the scientific accomplishment in some other agencies. I don't think that's the case for NOAA. I welcome Lori Arguelles back as the new Director for Public Affairs. She and Scott Smullen have always been a dynamic team. We're going to get farther into the public's discussion, and we'll be able to do that with grace and with sound information, but we need to make sure that the integrity of our science, the voice of our science, is richly, widely trusted and understood, and the public needs us now, particularly with the climate crisis. Thank you.
Louis?
Mimic that as well. I work for NOAA, but I do coastal surveys. I work for NOAA, but I do weather forecasts. You know, not but and. So I think it's a great point, Craig, that to improve the brand collective brand recognition would be helpful.
Yeah, I want to build on these comments. You know, we are a science-based service organization. So Team NOAA is a science-based service organization. We're an observation-based service organization. We're a model-based service organization. So the first comment I'll make is that in itself should open up the gates to the notion that you have to work across lines to advance the services. Okay, no matter where you happen to be sitting in those services. The second thing, you know, and we all have the integrity, we all have the dedication to those services. I mean, we know that because we've all been reviewed, right? And people see that. But we do have to look over our shoulder in terms of the what we need to advance, and we have to advance the services because people, you know, as we succeed in these areas and we have moments of incredible success, the expectation is we can do this all the time, you know, and we can't. There are still advances that have to be made. You know, it's called the predictability issue with respect to the model forecast, for example. So just keep that in mind. This isn't, you know, sort of a forced march to collaboration or cross-line office type work. It's an absolute necessity, and it took a lot of us that are at this level to figure that out as we emerged, you know, and rose up within our careers. Just saying is that we don't have the time. We should to have, you know, the new folks coming in to spend 15, maybe 10, 15 years discovering that. It's an absolute necessity. And the last comment I'll make in terms of the changes we're dealing with, it's not just the physical sciences. It's the physical and social sciences. And us as physical scientists have discovered how hard social science can really be. So if you're going to provide the services and affect decisions and risk factors and all that other stuff that comes along with it, and different communities, different ways of approaching them, better have a better understanding of the social sciences as we move forward.
Thanks very much for all those comments. A really wonderful discussion. So now it's time to move to our last question. I'd like each panelist to take 1 minute to highlight what you think success looks like for NOAA. Louis, in honor of your long service and your announcement of retirement, which is giving many of us pause because you have been such a pillar of our community for so long, we would like for you to provide your perspective on that question. So Louis first.
Getting them the information to do the services. It really depends on actually delivering on what the system's supposed to look like, what the service is supposed to look like, as viewed by those who use it and make decisions by it. So and that can be risky as a metric, but it's what the society will ultimately demand, because it really does come down to the public services that we provide.
Wonderful. Craig.
All right, yeah, thank you, Louis. Appreciate the grace. I would say what we need to do is speak of NOAA. Speaking of a line organization or a program within the line organization is very human. It is very natural. Social science tells us that people choose to associate in groups of about 120 or so, and that's your identity unit. But we need to raise beyond that and not confuse the public, but talk about NOAA, because if we truly do accept that there's no single mission that NOAA has that doesn't involve every line organization, the only way we're going to deliver on that mission is with every line organization.
Managing fisheries, and in a way that takes into account the science and predictive tools, but is able to look at a whole ecosystem, including the people who are part of it and who are influencing it in negative ways in many cases. That's only one piece of fisheries I'd like to talk about, but that's been on my mind quite a bit because it really requires changing governance and policies in a way that is pretty dramatic and requires the collaboration of all of these folks on the screen.
It certainly does, Janet. Steve.
Within and without, wherever it comes from, as part of in achieving that objective. Thanks.
Nicole.
Louisa, did you call on me? I can't hear your voice. Sorry.
Nancy, Nicole's up and we'll get you 1 minute.
Okay.
Sorry, Nicole. Thanks, Nicole. And Nancy, over to you.
Okay. I agree with everything everybody said. I think success looks like we meet the needs of the nation, that we deliver the products and services to sustainably meet the needs of the nation as they evolve and improve really the quality of life for every American and more broadly in the world, because we're delivering the right data to make the right decisions in the right time sink, and we're doing that sustainably, which means we have the right people, we have a diverse workforce, they've been trained, they've been provided the resources they need to do that job.
Wonderful. Any last comments or thoughts from the panelists? Greg?
Saying for some time now that NOAA is a $12 billion agency trapped in a $5.5 billion budget. So success to me would be that we do achieve the level of funding that is necessary for NOAA to deliver on those responsibilities that Congress has wisely given to this agency with this portfolio. So that's one level of success. The other level of success, I think, would be that we wind up seeing the type
I'll make a
of
comment.
diverse workforce
If
that the academic disciplines that serve
we're talking,
NOAA
this whole
can evolve
conversation has
to,
been
but may not yet
rightfully
presently be
internally
there, and that we can
focused.
work to help achieve that in our
just
recruitment and our
one of the other
sustaining
things
of
I've learned
development
is,
of those candidates
as
through
we've
the
gotten better,
educational partnership
there's
program,
greater
but also through our
expectations
research
throughout every
laboratories.
community,
I have no doubt
and
that our
greater needs
technical
that can
abilities
only
will
be
continue
served
to
by
lead
this
the world.
partnership
So to me, that
we've
mission
developed
success is
with
already
the
there.
private
We can
sector,
keep pushing it. But
and
ultimately,
it's actually
it will
lent
be
itself
speaking
to
with one
enhancing
voice,
the entire
having a
national
common
economy.
identity of NOAA
We
across
have
the
to
agency.
recognize moving forward and embrace the fact that we can't do it alone. All of these efforts that we're working towards will involve partnerships in the academic and the private sector communities across the entire value chain of activities that we all work towards. And we should embrace it because it's also creating jobs for a lot of these students that we support, et cetera. So I just want to emphasize that again. A great organization here, tremendous mission, tremendous abilities, and Craig is absolutely right. They crawl across broken glass on hot coals. I love that. Most dedicated workforce in any federal agency, but we still can't do it alone, and we have to look to those partnerships to get us over the finish line. Thank you.
Well, thank you to all of our panelists for your insightful remarks. We appreciate everyone joining us here today. We're lucky to have such qualified leaders helping us move NOAA forward. Thanks to Hann and the rest of the NOAA Environmental Leadership Seminar team for all your hard work to organize this session. Thanks also to our audience for joining us for this discussion today. We plan to repeat this panel on an annual basis, and we hope you can join us again next year. Thank you. Bye-bye.